Hi everyone, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you for coming. Oh my God, it's like the coldest day out of the whole winter, I think. And luckily, I guess we picked that day. So I'm actually very surprised and pleasantly surprised to see many of you here. As Taeyang mentioned, my name is Selena Lee. I'm an attorney practicing in New York, and I'm also the founder of a speaker series called Give One Dreams. So we have similar events like this where I interview people from different backgrounds with inspirational stories. So if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards, and then I'll add you to our mailing list. So without further ado, oh my God, I've been hearing about Sugyang for so long. So it's actually very meaningful for me to be sitting here and actually interviewing her and hearing her stories and also sharing with our audience. So let's get it started. I also saved some time for us for you to ask some questions at the end. So as we're having a discussion, think about what you want to ask her. So first question, how did you first become interested in the fashion industry? And, when you're faced with a really challenging family situation, why did you think about starting an online shopping mall?
어 처음에는 제 초등학교 때부터 패션에 관심이 굉장히 많았어요. 그래서 일본 잡지나 뭐 한국 잡지든 미국 잡지든 여러 가지 패션에 대한 잡지들을 다 모아 가지고 이제 그냥 초등학생들이 쓰는 스케치북에 잘라서 붙이고 뭐 스크랩하는 걸 좋아했고요.
I've always been interested in the fashion field, and since elementary school, I've always loved collecting fashion magazines from Japan, from Korea, from all over the world. And as an elementary school student, I was collecting and making a scrapbook out of fashion magazines on my sketchbook. So that's where my passion sprung from.
그래서 사람들이 이제 시내나 길거리에서 이렇게 돌아다닐 때 어떤 옷을 입는지 궁금해서 막 카페에 앉아서 사람들이 입은 옷을 구경하기도 하고 옛날 그런 것들을 굉장히 좋아했어요. 옷 입히는 것도 좋아하고 옷 입는 것도 좋아하고.
So oftentimes, like I would sit at a cafe downtown and just people watching, and just see how people are dressed and just looking at the magazines on the tables. And that's the things that I liked doing since I was in elementary school. And I liked getting dressed and dressing people. So that was my passion.
초등학교 때부터 그런 생각을 가지고 있었기 때문에 언젠가 나도 대학 생활을 정확하게 마치고 브랜드 런칭을 해서 많은 사람에게 내 옷을 입히고 싶다라는 생각을 했었어요.
I've always thought about launching my own brand name and wanting to like have people wear my clothing after I finish my college degree. But
갑자기 가정 환경이 너무 어려워져서 제가 생각하고 있었던 그 쇼핑몰이나 브랜드를 만드는 것이 좀 일찍 시작하게 됐던 것 같아요. 가정 환경이 너무 걷잡을 수 없이 안 좋아졌기 때문에 일을 할 수 있는 사람은 저뿐이었거든요.
And after all that, my family's financial situation went drastically bad, and I just had to start what I wanted to do way earlier than I thought I would, and that's where I ended up having to open my own business at such a young age.
그래서 제가 쇼핑몰을 하게 되었습니다.
Wow, okay, that's quite a story. But you had to drop out of school though. So dropping out of school, especially middle school, I'm sure was a very big and important decision for you, especially in Korea where education is considered so important. So why did you decide to drop out? And I'd be very interested to know the reactions of people around you. What did your parents say? What did your teachers say? And looking back, did you think that it was a good decision?
쇼핑몰 일을 한다는 게 굉장히 여러 가지 일이 있거든요. 사실 쉽게 볼 수가 있어요. 뭐 촬영을 해서 옷을 올리면 팔리는구나. 이렇게 3단계로 보시는 분들이 굉장히 많아요.
There are a lot of people who think it's not as hard as it actually is about having your own shopping mall, just upload a photo of clothes and people will buy, but it really isn't.
여러 가지 일을 생각해 봤을 때 너무 일이 크고 많기 때문에 학교 생활을 병행하면서 이 일을 하기에는 제가 너무 버거울 것 같아서 자퇴를 결심했어요.
It was impossible for me to continue my schooling and have my own business at the same time, given all these work that I had to do with the shopping mall. So I had to decide to quit school.
그러나 역시 한국 문화는 자퇴라는 것에 대해서 굉장히 반감을 많이 사고 있기 때문에 부모님부터 시작해서 저희 친척들까지 많이 반대를 하셨어요.
Due to the strong opposition, I mean, not opposition, but since Korean society is pretty demanding in terms of education, my whole family member, extended family members and cousins and uncles and everyone very much opposed against me quitting school.
교육 쪽에 있으신 친척들이 많아서 굉장히 많은 저에게 설득도 하시고 막 화를 내시기도 하시고 하셨는데 정말 굳은 결심으로 학교를 자퇴하게 됐고 지나봤을 때는 그 결정이 정말 잘한 결정이었구나 이런 생각을 하면서 지금은 후회하지 않아요. 얻은 것들이 굉장히 많거든요, 저한테.
There were a lot of family members and family members who were teachers. So they insisted that I shouldn't quit school, but I was determined to do so. And I, like looking back, I don't regret it. And that was the only choice that I had at the time.
So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm gonna launch a new business and I'm gonna start an online shopping mall, but I'm sure you had a lot to learn. You have to start from nothing. So how did you prepare to launch this business?
쇼핑몰 준비하는 과정에 있어서 굉장히 아까 쉽다고 말씀드렸는데 제가 시작할 때는 굉장히 많은 일들이 있더라고요.
There were, like I said, there were a lot more than what you would initially think that it would take. A lot more effort and a lot more work that goes into launching your own business, especially shopping mall. So
먼저 쇼핑몰 창업에 대한 카페나 책이나 그런 지식들을 먼저 습득을 했고요. 실제 쇼핑몰에서 밑에서 아르바이트를 하면서 그렇게 쇼핑몰 일에 대해서 익혔던 것 같아요.
I was reading and learning a lot about the whole opening business part from online cafes, books, and everything. And also, I worked as a part-time employee at a shopping mall to gain more experience.
전체적인 과정은 먼저 동대문이나 아니면 디자인샵에 가서 물건을 가져와서 그 물건들을 각자에 맞는 컬러 매치나 코디들을 통해서 일단 한 착장씩 코디를 하고요. 그 다음에 그걸 가지고 모델과 함께 촬영을 해서 그 촬영한 것을 사진으로 사진 셀렉트를 해서 그 사진 고른 것을 가지고 작업을 해서 이제 쇼핑몰에 올리고 쇼핑몰에서 이제 올린 것을 보고 고객님들이 물건을 구매하는 형식이에요.
Well, I would pick out items and select items from the suppliers in Dongdaemun, and I would come up with the coordinations with different styles and also match different colors and accessories and jewelries to stylize. And after that, I would have a photo shoot with models and take photos. And with the photos, I would go ahead and edit all the photos on my own and upload them and start the sales online. And after that, I would communicate with the customers to satisfy their needs.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot to do for like a 17-year-old. I didn't know 99% of it. I actually none of that when I was your age. So I'd like to hear some of your most difficult and also some of the most interesting and fun experiences of running this business, and also what is it like to be a teenager boss? I'm sure all of your employees are much older than you.
처음에 이제 쇼핑몰을 시작하면서 어린 나이에 시작한 것도 있지만 제일 크고 현실적인 문제는 금전적인 문제였어요.
Well, the first and the biggest problem that I faced, or what brought me into the situation, was my financial problem and the family, and that was definitely the most difficult difficult problem that I had to face.
많이 어려웠기 때문에 뭐 전화나
Very much.
문자가 와서 뭐 전기세 내라, 뭐 가스세 내라 이런 식으로 계속 톡촉을 받으면서 살아왔어요. 그런 부분이 굉장히 힘들었고요.
There were a lot of people who were pressuring our whole entire family to pay debt on all these like phone bills and everything, like on a daily basis. So that was very difficult.
힘들었던 점도 굉장히 많고 하지만 아무래도 제 나이 또래가 할 수 없는 쇼핑몰 일을 하면서 뭐 모델하고 촬영도 하고 여러 가지 일을 하면서 되게 재밌었던 것 같아요. 제가 좋아하는 옷을 만져보면서 그 옷을 코디하고 모델과 촬영해서 쇼핑몰에 그 상품을 올린다는 게 굉장히 재밌고 10대 사장이라고 하면서 이제 막 여러 가지 일을 하면서 다양한 사람도 만나는 게 되게 즐겁고요.
Of course, being able to gain experience that none of my peers would have as a teen boss was definitely one of the most fun. I mean, I guess the most exciting experience that I think that I could have gotten out of from running my own shopping mall, and also having like touching and making my own clothes and selling them and dressing them on my models. Like that was all part of a good experience that I've had.
쇼핑몰 촬영을 하는 경우에는 계절을 먼저 앞서가서 촬영을 해야 되기 때문에 여름에는 봄 상품을 찍고 봄에는 죄송해요. 말을 이상하게 되는데 봄에는 여름 상품을 찍고 여름에는 가을 상품을 찍고 가을에는 겨울 상품을 찍고 또 겨울에는 봄 상품을 찍고 이러면서 계절과 다른 그런 옷들을 촬영하면서 먼저 남들보다 먼저 되게 신상품을 입고 또 입히면서 그런 걸 올렸기 때문에 그런 부분이 되게 재밌었던 것 같아요.
And also, given the nature of the field, having to prepare for the next season, for example, for spring collection, you would have to prepare it like in the cold, like today, and for summer collection, you would take it in the spring. So all of that, and being able to get in touch with all of the newer collection before anyone else was definitely something that I was really excited about.
So I know you said you don't have any regrets of dropping out of school, but we've met before, and I think you're 20 years old. 지금 몇 살이죠? 20살?
지금 21살, 한국 나이로 21살인데
So 21-year-old in Korea, but still 20, so she's actually not even legal yet.
19살 나이로 19살.
19, so 19 years old. So her friends are in college now. So your friends are in college now. Do you think that you want to at some point go back to school?
누구나 그럴 것 같은데 공부를 하면 일을 하고 싶고 일을 하면 공부를 하고 싶은데 제가 정말 공부를 하고 싶어요. 지금
I mean, I think it applies to everyone that, yeah, I guess some of you understood, but that if you are working, you want to go back to studying, and if you're studying, you want to get out of school and work. But for me, I really do want to study.
중학교 때 중퇴를 했기 때문에 뭐 친구들하고도 뭐 어떤 소통 같은 것도 없었고 뭐 배우는 것도 없었기 때문에 일단 대학에 대한 욕심이 굉장히 많고요.
Because I had to quit out of middle school, like I don't have enough interaction with my peers from school, and also the whole education part. So I definitely want to go back to college.
그래도 제가 공부는 못했지만 지금까지 굉장히 여러 가지 일을 해왔기 때문에 좋은 분들과 연결이 돼서 언젠간 좋은 기회가 오지 않을까 생각하고 있습니다.
Although I was lacking my education, I was gaining a lot of different experiences, hands-on experience while I was working, and I was able to meet all these great people and very great connections. So I'm hoping that, or I think that it will enable me to, give me good opportunities or unexpected opportunities that would lead me into being a student.
I understand it's your first visit to New York, actually first visit to the United States. So, and I know you went to the Fashion Week last night. So how was your visit to New York?
미국에도 처음 오고 뉴욕에도 처음 오고 또 패션쇼에 처음 초대받은 게 뉴욕에서 이상봉 선생님 패션쇼를 초대받게 됐어요.
Well, it was my first time in the States and first time in New York, and it was my first fashion show, and I was invited to designer Lee Sang-bong's fashion show last night.
여러 가지 많이 봤는데요. 뭐 9.11 기념관에서도 그런 것도 보고 9.11 기념관에서는 누군가 성공을 한 사람들이 그 쌍둥이 빌딩에 살았었잖아요. 이렇게 일을 하시고. 근데 그걸 보면서 인생이 되게 짧다고 느끼고 제가 지금 하루하루 살아가는 게 되게 감사하다고 느껴지더라고요.
Well, I also went to the 9/11 memorial, and thinking that there were a lot of successful people who were in the building during that time, I sort of came to realize that life is very short and every day is a privilege, that I should really appreciate every day I have.
뭐 수상 택시도 탔고 그리고 여러 가지 박물관도 보면서 뉴욕이 이제 전 세계에서 대단한 사람들이 모이는 곳이잖아요. 그러면서 정말 많은 걸 배워가는 것 같아요. 열정도 그렇고 제가 나중에 봐야 되는 시각도 굉장히 넓어진 기분이 들고요.
Well, I went on riding water taxi, and I've been to different museums, and New York is definitely a place where all these passionate and successful or great people gather. So I definitely learned a lot out of my trip to New York, and I'm getting more motivation and like learning and experience out of my visit.
여러분이 계신 뉴욕은 정말 대단한 곳인 것 같다는 걸 느꼈어요.
It's a great place.
So this is my last question that I prepared for. So feel free to ask any questions you want after this last question. So you've obviously experienced a lot and achieved so much for such a young age. What messages do you have for people your age or others who may be going through a tough time and also struggling to figure out what their dreams are?
많은 분들이 꿈에 대해서 강의를 하시거나 다양한 강의를 하실 때 꿈을 당장 이뤄라 그리고 당장 나가라라는 말씀을 많이 하시더라고요.
There are a lot of people who give lectures and lessons on achieving your dreams, and most of them, or a lot of them, say that go after your dream, chase after your dreams. But
물론 그것도 굉장히 중요하고 당장 자기가 한다는 그런 자신감이 있는 것도 굉장히 중요하지만 제가 포커스를 맞춘 부분은 꿈을 시작하기 전에 자기를 먼저 사랑하는 게 중요하다고 생각해요.
of course, I do think that it's important to chase after your dreams and to have confidence. But I think it's more important before doing so to have self-esteem and care about your own self before you go out to try to achieve your dreams.
한국 사람도 그렇고 또 많은 사람들의 특징은 항상 자기 자신을 낮게 평가하고 자기 자신을 비하하고 그런 것들이 굉장히 쉬운 것 같아요.
I feel that a lot of times Korean people tend to underestimate their own abilities and own sort of identity. That
하루하루 살면서 나는 왜 이걸 못하지? 나는 왜 이게 없지? 이런 열등감과 가지는 말들과 그리고 자존감이 떨어지는 말들을 계속하는 것보다는 자기가 있는 그런 자랑스러운 자존감을 좀 키워나가면서 하루하루 나는 잘하고 있어, 난 잘 되고 있어 이런 식으로 자기를 좀 사랑해주고 자기를 보듬어줬으면 좋겠어요.
I think it's very important that you love yourself and you take care of yourself instead of having like low sense of security and having to scold yourself on like why am I not good at this and why don't I have this, and instead of that like you should really love yourself.
그게 제가 생각하는 꿈을 가지기 전에 해야 할 일이라고 생각하고요. 물론 제가 정말 어린 나이지만 많은 기간 동안 이런 일들을 하면서 느낀 거예요.
I think that's what's more important before you even think about having a dream, and after even if I am a young person now, after all these experience that I've gone through, that's what I came to realize and learn.
다른 사람들 이렇게 위로하는 것도 굉장히 중요하지만 자기를 위로하는 여러분이 되시길 진심으로 바랄게요. 사랑해요.
I mean, it's also important that you you take care of other people, but it's very important that you take care of your own self and love yourself. And I love you.
Okay, we're going to open up the floor for questions. So if anyone has anything to ask, yes.
Given that Korea has the reputation of having really tight capital markets, as a startup, it's very difficult to get that capital to help your business start up and grow. How did you overcome those barriers to essentially expand your business when you needed to grow, especially given that your family already had the financial hardship hanging over them? And for those that don't know, the Korean market, family finances really affect your personal credit rating when you do business.
한국 자본시장이 아마 그렇게 타이트해서 혼자 이렇게 창업을 하는 게 당연히 어려웠을 텐데, 특히 또 가족들의 그런 경제적인 상황이 많이 영향을 미치기도 하고, 그런 조금 타이트한 자본시장에서 어떻게 창업을 혼자 할 수 있었는지, 그리고 어떻게 성공적일 수 있었는지, 어떻게 성공적일 수 있었는지.
한국에는 굉장히 많은 쇼핑몰들이 있고 자본시장도 타이트한 건 맞는데 제가 지금 하고 있는 게 딱 제 나이 또래라거든요. 그걸.
Well, there are definitely a lot of shopping malls, so a huge pool of competition, and also the capital market in Korea is very tight. But where I'm where I fall under in terms of the shopping mall categories is like my peers. So I think that
중요한 거는 파는 고객님이 저라고 생각하고 일단 먼저 일에 임하는 것 같아요. 그래서 만약에 옷을 산다고 하면은 '내가 옷을 산다고 하면 어떤 옷을 살까?'라는 생각을 가지고 판매를 하는 것 같아요.
I think that because I can empathize a lot with the people who are my customers, I would put myself in their shoes and just think in their terms that what would I buy if I were the customers, and I am selling to those customers who are my age, so I think I would have a better understanding in that direction.
가격적인 부분에서도 되게 좋은 옷을 좋은 가격에 판매하는 것도 좋지만 좋은 옷을 착한 가격에 판매하는 게 굉장히 좋다고 생각해서 사는 것도 좀 저렴하게 판매하려고 노력하는 편이고요.
And of course, for the price range, I try to keep it very kind and nice, and relatively speaking, with the good qualities that we provide at our shopping mall. So that's one thing that's one of our strengths, that we provide good material, good clothes for a good price. So that's the strength.
네, 그런 방법.
Yes, right there.
I have a question about your sales strategy. I too work for a fashion company as a merchandiser for online actually, and then we often face with every season there's inventory left, and there are products that certainly don't move. So what's your strategy for moving that through like kind of promotion, and then especially in New York, like Black Friday expected, like every summer, like customers know they're very savvy, so they like sometimes wait until the sale kicks in. So if there's any strategy that you use.
사무실에 그냥 사무실이지만 마켓을 열어서 플리마켓을 열어요.
Oftentimes, even in my office place, I open a flea market.
옷을 싸게 판다고 해서 제 주위에 친한 분들이나 아니면 아는 사람들만 부르는 게 아니라 고객님들도 그렇고 고객이 아닌 분들도 다 불러서 파티처럼 옷을 판매하고 있고요.
I would open a flea market like a form of party and invite people that are not just my acquaintance, but also like from all over, the customers and non-customers, to let them expose them to our clothing line.
재고 처리를 한다는 개념보단 많은 사람들 만나서 소통하고 그 사람들이 원하는 옷이 무엇인가 제가 알기도 하고요. 그리고 또 제 옷을 직접 입어보신 분들이 퀄리티가 굉장히 좋기 때문에 만족하셔서 그런 저에 대한 믿음도 생기기도 하고 그런 게 있는 것 같아요.
And not only do I take it as getting rid of leftover inventory, I take it as a chance for me to communicate with the customers and with potential customers and communicate with them and sort of see what they want and ask them what they like about it and what they don't. And oftentimes there are a lot of customers who are satisfied with the quality of the clothes that we sell. So that also helps me to gain more trust from the customers.
Okay, next question. You in the very back. Yes.
저는 중국어 신문 웹사이트, TV 등의 폭 미디어 그룹에서 일하는 스티브라고 합니다. 제이미를 통해서 중국 내 구매자들이 빅토리아 가려주는 상품을 구입할 수 있다고 들었는데 이제 사이즈나 이런 안 맞을 경우에 또 어떻게 신속한 사후 서비스를 진행할 수 있는지, 그리고 해외의 중국인들 또한 한류 열풍이 대단한데 어떻게 해당 상품을 접할 수 있을지 궁금합니다.
Can you translate it to the whole crowd in English?
Well, due to the K wave, he was speaking on behalf of the Chinese market, I assume, and Victoria Garson, her shopping mall, is also gaining attention as part of the Korean fashion, and he was wondering whether how she would manage the international customers and how would the after service be in terms of the customer service.
제이미를 어떻게 아시고? 아 감사합니다. 제임이라는 쇼핑몰을 통해서 이제 중국에 지금 진행을 하고 있는 상황이고요. 지금 같은 경우에는 중국 시장도 굉장히 발달되어 있긴 한데 제가 이제 진행을 하다가 아무래도 좀 중국하고 계속 교류를 하면서 반품 처리는 굉장히 없었던 것 같아요. 오히려 중국에 보내는 거기 때문에 굉장히 신경을 많이 쓰고 검수 같은 것도 철저히 해서 반품률은 없었던 것 같아요 일단.
Well, through the Chinese shopping mall, Jamie, I do have interactions with the Chinese market, and because it's going up, because it's me sending my items abroad, I would take extra care in terms of going through my products and make sure that there's no returns or unsatisfied items to come back to Korea. So there wasn't any case of return or any need for after service yet. So that's how she kept her strategies in terms of keeping the qualities good.
중국 시장에서도 여러 가지 뭐 판매되는 것도 있었는데 제 개인적으로는 좀 더 욕심이 좀 더 정확하게 더 좋은 옷을 판매하고 싶은 마음에 지금은 일단 중국 시장에 대해서 좀 더 발전시키려고 노력하고 있는 상황이에요.
And I am trying to develop, improve more in that direction also because I would want to expand into that and also want to have a bigger variety of selection in terms of the items, and that's what I'm working on it right now as well.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Okay, right there.
So, what's your future planning in terms of your business? Like, for example, you want to open an offline store in case, or like, because I know some big online shopping mall in Korea, like they open their store at the department store and stuff like that. So, 제 질문은 나중에 어떤 더 비즈니스적으로 플랜이 어떻게 되시는지 예를 들면 실제로 매장을 연다든지 아니면 다른 생각하시는 게 있으세요?
나이대가 너무 어리면 좋지 않은 것 같아요. 나이대가 어리면 아무래도 가격을 맞춰야 되기 때문에 퀄리티가 좋지 못한 상품을 진행하게 되고요.
The fact that my initial shopping mall was targeted for the teenagers, which sort of limits the financial pool. So I think that, because you have to keep the price really low and try to have the best quality out of it.
그러면 제가 생각하고 있는 고객님이 저인데 제가 생각하고 있는 옷이 아닌 것 같아서 일단 나이대를 약간 올려서 하는 것도 괜찮을 것 같고 퀄리티를 약간 올려서 일단 진행을 하고 싶고요. 오프라인 쇼핑몰 같은 경우는 지금은 아직 제가 더 준비하고 있는 상황인데 네, 좋은 기회가 되면은 좋은 곳에 입점하고 싶어요.
Well, I would want to improve even more the quality of the clothes that we sell, and I think one way to do it would be to sort of target an older customer pool instead of just the teenagers, which is definitely difficult in terms of the whole quality and price balance. And also as far as the offline store, I would, if I get the good chance, like I want to like have my store somewhere.
쇼핑몰을 하시는 분들한테 제일 중요한 건 일단 그냥 한마디로 말해서 좋은 옷을 판매하는 것이라고 생각하거든요. 그래서 지금 제가 계획하고 있는 모든 것들의 중심은 더욱 좋은 옷을 고객님들한테 판매하는 것이라고 생각해요.
Well, my ultimate goal the ultimate goal for any kind of shopping mall would be to sell nice quality and fashionable clothing, and that's what I'm going for. And
I hope that answers your question. Anybody else have a question? Okay, right there. I can barely see you.
Are there people who weren't satisfied with your products? And if so, did you try to make them satisfied by giving them additional items?
Thank you for that question.
옷에 실밥이 있는 경우가 있었거든요. 여기 밑단 부분이 실밥이 약간 튀어나온 경우가 있었어요.
well, there was a case where there was a thread string hanging out a little bit out of one item.
그거 가지고 전화하셔서 되게 물건 이상한 걸 판매한다고 불량이라고 막 욕을 하시는 분들이 계셨어요.
And there were and there were people who were cursing at me for having such non-satisfactory items just because of that.
그걸로 인해서 고객님들이 굉장히 다양한 스타일이 많구나. 사람은 누구나 이렇게 성격이 다양한 사람들이 있듯이 고객님들도 다양한 스타일이 많구나 생각을 했고, 그래서 다양한 사람들이 생각했을 때 이 옷이 진짜 좋은 상품인가를 생각하고 진짜 더 실밥 하나도 굉장히 신경 쓰게 됐던 것 같아요.
Well, and from those kind of experience, I learned that there are so many different kinds of customers, like how there are so many different types of people. So after that, I would take extra measures to examine my clothes and my items more so than ever to make sure that she can really satisfy everyone of every type of customers.
만족을 못했을 경우엔 제가 직접 전화드려요. 그래서 전화드려서 죄송하다고 말씀드리고, 이게 이런 상황에서 이렇게 처리가 되었던 것 같은데 그 부분에 대해서는 정말 죄송하고 새 제품으로 다시 보내드릴 테니까 물건 그냥 착불로 보내달라고 말씀드렸어요.
Well, in those cases, I would directly call them and send them an apology for their dissatisfaction, and also I would send them the new product for that, which I would make sure that it's completely satisfactory, and I would ask them to send the original product back to
그래서
the.
보내드릴 때 너무 죄송하니까 제 작은 마음을 표현할 수 있는 조그만 화장품 파우치라든지 그런 것도 보내드렸었고요.
And on top of just sending the new product, I would send like a cosmetic pouch or some sort of little gift as an apology / a gift to the customer.
Okay, next question. In the back.
조금 더 현실적이고 비즈니스 관점으로 봤을 때 좀 더 현실적이고 비즈니스 관점으로 봤을 때 그 대구라는 지역이나 이제 그런 현재 상황이나 이제 사장님의 그런 사장 같은 걸 봤을 때 조금 제한적인 게 있었던 것 같은데 그런 거를 좀 이겨낼 수 있는 어떤 방법이라던가 조금 그 당시에 뭐 패션이 발달되지 않은 좀 조금 트렌드가 늦은 대구나 아니면 나이를 고려했을 때 해결나갈 수 있었던 방법은 어떤 것이 있었는지 좀 알려줄 수 있을까요?
Well, given the regional aspect where she started her shopping mall in Daegu, which is sort of outside of the metropolitan city of Seoul. So how were you able to overcome the regional sort of limits and disadvantage, sort of being far from the capital of fashion industry and sort of maybe a little late to the frontline trend, fashion trend? And how are you able to overcome that with your strategies?
지금은 정보가 굉장히 발달한 시기이기 때문에 굳이 대구라고 해서 어떤 제한적인 것들은 없었고요. 인터넷으로 고객님들이 원하는 상품이 어떤 것인지 굉장히 많이 찾아봤던 것 같아요. 드라마에서 연예인이 어떤 걸 입었는지, 그리고 어떤 분이 어떤 컴플렉스가 있어서 어떤 옷을 원하는지 그런 것들을 먼저 찾아봐서 고객의 니즈를 좀 파악을 했고요. 그리고 당장에 지금 저한테 제한적이었던 그런 가정사라든지 그런 부분은 그런 부분이 있었기 때문에 제한적이다기보다는 당장 내가 가족들을 위해서 일을 해야 된다는 생각이 있어서 되게 그냥 닥치고 다 이랬던 것 같아요. 그냥 네.
Well, given today's technology and online access, it wasn't so limiting in terms of me having my base in Daegu that I was able to access the fastest trend online, and also because it was an online shopping mall, it wasn't so disadvantageous as having the base in Daegu, and also that well, given my financial problems with my family, like there was no other way around for me to like think of other options. So I just really had to go into the market, go into the business, like right on without having to think about the limits and the downfalls of my problems.
There was a question right here. Yes.
I was wondering, since you started at high school and you said your family was in a debt, I was wondering how was you able to afford to start? Like, how much did you start with? Because when you first begin, you need to like pay your photographers, the models, even getting going to the wholesale and buying the products, transportation fees, even the inventory programs are not for free. So I was wondering how much did you start with and how were you able to afford it in the beginning?
처음에 돈이 아예 없었기 때문에 제가 아르바이트로 되게 돈도 좀 많이 모았었고, 그리고 저희 아버지가 잘 살 때 제가 관심이 많아서 산 카메라라든지 그런 프로그램들이 좀 저에게 도움 많이 됐고요. 무엇보다 도움이 됐던 거는 저희 외갓집에서 제 사정을 아시니까 그 재정적으로 좀 도와주셨던 것 같아요.
Well, I mean, of course, I worked as a part-timer before I started my own business, so I collected some money on that. And also because I had a wealthier life, or before my father had the whole financial problem and had his business go downfall, I had the items like cameras and like other items that were probably like needed for the business. So that was definitely helpful. And also my mother's family, like mother side of the family, knew of the situation, so they definitely supported me financially a little bit as well.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
So for like an advice for anyone in high school or college trying to start, how much would like recommendation? Obviously you can't start big, but what's basic?
저 같은 경우에는 각자 이제 가진 거에 따라 다른 것 같아요. 저 같은 경우는 카메라에 관심이 많아서 카메라를 미리 구매해 놓은 상태였고, 컴퓨터도 집에 다 있는 상태였거든요.
Well, I guess it's different for different people in terms of what you already have. That for me, I already had my camera and the computer. So
그래서 이제 뭐 그렇다고 하더라도 옷을 먼저 살 금액이 필요하고, 그리고 뭐 직원이나 이런 것들은 그런 것들도 필요하고, 모델들을 하는 것도 굉장히 필요한데, 일단 직원들에 대한 들어가는 비용은 제가 다 했기 때문에 그런 부분은 다 절감됐고, 그다음 모델이나 이런 여러 가지 부분에 대해서는 외숙모께서 지원해 주신 게 한 600만 원 정도 그렇게 저에게 지원해 주셨고요. 또 나머지 제가 이제 또 쇼핑을 하면서 필요한 것들이 또 있더라고요. 계속 필요한 것들이 있어서 그건 이제 좀 은행에서 도움을 받아 가지고 진행하게 됐습니다.
no, okay, I got it. Well, definitely there were a lot of spendings that had to go in, but aside from the camera and computer, for the employment part, I did everything that was needed, so that was that. But for modeling and for buying clothes to sell, the mother side of my family, or my aunt, supported me with okay, so $6,000 equivalent of Korean won, and I was able to. And also, I got a little help from the bank as I needed more stuff as I went into the business, because it wasn't everything that I thought in the beginning that was needed to the business.
Okay, next question. And then I'll get back to you. Right in the very back, yes.
네, 내일 한국에 이제 돌아가신다고 들었어요. 근데 만약에 이제 또 한국에 가시면 여러 가지 방송이나 또 이렇게 한국에서도 이런 젊은이들에게 또 이야기를 전해주실 수 있는 그런 기회가 많이 있다고 알고 있는데, 만약에 그 한국에 있는 젊은이들에게 김수경 대표의 그런 그 미국 요번에 이렇게 왔다 간 경험에 대해서 이렇게 이야기를 한다고 했을 때 뭐 무엇을 봤다 뭐 이런 거 외에 이렇게 일주일간 짧은 기간이었지만 5일 6일간의 그런 미국 그에 왔다 갔 그런 경험에 대해서 우리 한국에 있는 젊은이들에게 만약에 돌아가시고 나서 어떠한 메시지가 가장 크게 많이 들려주고 싶으신지 알고 싶네요.
Okay, that was long. But, I know you're going back tomorrow, back to Seoul. I mean, back to Korea. And from your 5 to 6 day visit in New York, aside from what you saw and where you went, and I know you have a lot of opportunities to speak to young Korean generation about your own experience and to sort of give them lessons. What do you think would be the message that you would give them about your experience in New York, and not aside from the tourist aspect?
한국에서만 이렇게 열심히 일을 하는 게 아니라 뉴욕에서도 더 시장이 발달되어 있다고 말하고 싶고 네, 일단
Well, I would definitely want to say that beyond Korea's competitive market, there's a whole new level of grand market in New York or in the States.
다양한 것들을 많이 봤는데
And I've seen a lot of different things and different experience.
Guess he needed a few minutes to think.
너무 생각이
Well, she's still on
많아가지고
trip, so
Still processing.
뉴욕에서 제가 여러 가지 봤던 것들을 보면서 느낀 게 정말 세상은 넓구나라는 걸 느꼈어요. 그래서 한국에 갔을 때 지금 갖고 있는 그런 벽들을 보는 게 아니라 내가 더 넓은 세상을 나갈 수 있다는 걸 알았으면 좋겠다라고 얘기를 하고 싶고요. 네.
Well, I learned that the world is really big, and when I go back home and sort of aside or beyond the sort of daily or sort of tedious limits that you see in Korea, like I would want to sort of have the motivation to go beyond those small limits to the world and explore the bigger market.
더 넓은 세상을 바라보고 그거에 대해서 좀 자기가 좀 한정적으로 생각하지 말고 더 넓은 세상에 대해서 나아갈 수 있으니까 자신감을 가지고 하는 것도 중요하지만 그만큼 세계로 나가려면 그만큼의 노력이 필요하니까 더 많은 노력을 했으면 좋겠다라고 얘기를 하고 싶고. 네.
Because there is a whole new world beyond just Korea, and I mean also like along with kind of going over the limits in the domestic market, I would have to say that you would have to put in so much effort to overcome all those limits and open yourself up to the the bigger world.
그리고 또 영어를 배우라고 말하고 싶어요.
And to study English, of course.
제가 옆에 지금 언니를 두고 지금 통역을 하고 있는데 제가 나중에는 제가 영어로 할 수 있는 날이 오기를 기대하면서 영어를 배우라고 말하고 싶네요.
Yeah, well, now you have a translator, but I hope that one day I would be able to have an interview or have my own lecture in English without having a translator.
There's a question right here.
This was kind of related to her question before. I was wondering, like, because a lot of American shopping sites are still, a lot of them still only offer like the product image without models. Although a growing number of sites are providing modeled images now, but especially in Korea, I feel like all shopping fashion websites, especially, all have to be modeled to sell well. So I was wondering how you balance out the costs where like then you have to hire models and a photographer too, perhaps if you don't do it yourself. And how do you balance that cost with also since you're trying to keep the clothing 착한 가격, how do you balance those costs?
인건비를 최대한 줄이려고 제가 일을 하고 있고요. 그리고 모델 같은 경우는 왜 사용을 하냐면 그냥 옷만 이렇게 찍어서 사용하고 저 같은 경우는 미국에서 옷 구매를 했을 때 포에버 21을 진짜 좋아하거든요.
Well, to lower the labor cost, I do basically everything on my own aside from modeling, and she does photography. I mean, photographs too as well. But I love Forever 21 from the UF shopping mall.
그리고 여러 가지 브랜드들이 많은데 옷 체형에 대해서 뭔가 좀 현실적이거나 그런 체형들은 없는 것 같아요. 그리고 또 이렇게 좀 자세한 그런 묘사가 없었던 것 같고.
Well, because there's not that many modeled shots of clothes in the US websites, it was hard for me to sort of get the estimate of the realistic sort of fit of the clothes. So that's why.
그래서 저는 이제 이 옷을 입었을 때 뭔가 어디 나갔을 때 뭐 어떤 활동을 한다 이런 걸 생각을 하고 모델한테 입혀서 어디 실제적으로 사람들이 많이 밖에 나간 장소에서 다양한 포즈나 이런 걸 잡으면서 그 체형을 알려주려고 많이 표현을 하려고 하는 것 같아요.
So when we shoot clothes with the models on, like I would try to have them styled in a realistic sort of situation where I would be wearing this clothes for this kind of occasion. So I would put the models in on site, like in different venues outdoor, and try to give the customers a realistic sort of feel to what it's like to wear that clothes there.
그 비용 어떻게 밸런스하냐? 모델을 계속 고용해야 되니까.
아, 모델은 친구들을 같이 하고 있어요.
Yeah. And I definitely take advantage of having friends as models. So that does a lot of.
네, 그래서 친구들이다 보니까 정말 거의 그냥 일반 모델한테 주는 것보다 더 저를 도와주려고 많이 해서 친구들의 도움으로 모델을 쓰고 있고요.
And because I am not employing like a model who are not my friends, they are definitely willing to help me out, and which definitely helps me lower the cost of hiring models for the photo shoots.
Oh, that's a great business strategy. Hire all your family and your friends. Okay, next question. Anybody? Okay, right there.
혹시 지금 한국에 창업하려는 사람 많을 것 같은데 젊은 학생들 여기도 창업하는 사람 많을 것 같은데요. 지금 성공적인 스토리 말고 혹시 실패담 같은 거 공유해주고 싶은 거 있으면 좀 알려주세요. 만약에 내가 처음보다 좋아할 수 있다면 지금의 그 지식과 경험 같은 거 내가 이건 이렇게 했었는데 그때 그렇게 해서 실패했을까 하는 게 있다면 다른 사람들 똑같이 경험할 것 같은데 그거 혹시 공유해줄 수 있는 얘기 있을까요?
Okay. I assume that there would be a lot of people, a lot of young Koreans who would be motivated to open their own, start their own business. So if there's anything that aside from all these successful stories that made you who you are, where you are now, were there any moments or were there any times that you went through like non-successful times? And if so, given the knowledge and experience that you have now, if you were to go back from when you started, is there anything that you would think that you would not want to do or you would do when you go back?
실패담 하면 저죠. 실패담이
That's me. Losing every time.
실패담이 너무 많아서 현실적인 이야기를 듣고 싶어 하시는 분들한테 하고 싶은 얘기는 자기가 생각하는 그런 것보다 자기가 원하는 옷과 사람들이 원하는 옷이 다르다. 그런 건 알았으면 좋겠어요.
I mean, of course, there were so many depressing moments, but I think it's very important that you know that there's a difference between what kind of clothes or what kind of items that I love and I like from what kind of clothes or items for other markets that people or the public like.
그거는 옷도 해당되고 웹디자인도 해당되고 여러 가지 상품 핏이라든지 그런 거가 적용이 돼요.
And I think that's applicable to not only just clothing, but web design and other items and in all different categories.
대중이 원하는 거 그리고 또 대중이 그 원해서 구매를 할 수 있는 현실적이게 구매를 할 수 있는 대중적인 디자인이나 그런 옷을 판매하는 것도 중요하다고 생각해요. 저 같은 경우 제가 좋아하는 스타일로 맨 처음에 웹사이트를 디자인하고 좋아하는 것만으로 이제 옷을 디자인했었는데 안 팔리더라고요. 그래서 대중적인 것들을 좀 더 생각하면서 사람들이 원하는 걸 하니까 또 좀 더 발전됐던 것 같아요.
Well, when I started off sort of adding or putting so much of my personal taste into selecting clothing and designing my website, but that didn't sell well. And so I sort of compromised to sort of having the public opinion and sort of thinking in their perspective to widen my own taste to sell what they would like instead of my personal choice. So that did the job, I think.
또 다른 실패담.
다른 실패담은
다른 사람 것도 되는 것 같아요.
다른 사람 것도? 네네네.
그러면 나중에는 그 소비자들이 원하는 거 어떻게 해서 알게 됐어요?
So additional question would be, how are you able to find the public taste and how are you able to sort of like understand their needs after giving up your own personal taste?
처음에는 잡지나 패션쇼 이런 걸 많이 봤다면 이제는 그런 거를 겪고 난 이후로 카페 그리고 사람들이 좋아하는 뭐 옷을 모아놓은 그런 사이트나 이런 것을 좀 보고 많이 참고를 했었어요.
Well, I started off looking at a lot of high fashion magazine and those kind of websites where it's not really daily or realistic for people, just regular customers. And after that, I sort of looked into the different cafes and blogs and websites that had collections of what people would wear on like daily basis. And that's where I got my inspiration from in terms of learning about public taste.
그리고 제가 생각했던 제가 생각하는 제가 좋아하는 옷을 입은 모델들을 상상했었는데 제가 좋아하는 옷을 입은 일반인을 생각했어요. 네.
Well, at first I thought of people like models wearing the clothing that I like, and it turned into me thinking or imagining regular and normal people wearing the clothes that I like, and that was a big difference.
일반인이라고 말해서 그런데 솔직히 말해서 그냥 뚱뚱한 사람들.
Well, basically, I don't know if I should say fat people, but yeah, like fat people, not unlike models. So that was helpful.
그래서 그렇게 생각하다 보니까 어떤 좋은 아이템이 나왔냐면 그냥 뭐 어떤 분들은 또 다리살이 되게 뚱뚱하신 분들이 계시고 하체가 통통하신 분들이 계시고 뭐 팔뚝이 통통하신 분들이 계시잖아요.
And that came with a realistic and very good item that there are a lot of people with their own complex in upper body and lower body, arms and legs with more than enough fatness.
그래서 그건 정말 제가 잘 아는데 그래서 이제
I know it very well too.
생각하게 된 아이템이 스타킹인데 그냥 일반적인 스타킹이 아니라 굉장히 좀 쫙 조여주는 스타킹을 생각하게 된 거죠.
So one of the items that sold really well was like tights that was just not a regular tights but a very tight that just just pushes all your fat into shape and makes you look in shape. Oh my god.
쉽게 말해서 그냥 이렇게 됐다가 이렇게 되는 그런 다리가 이렇게 됐다 이렇게 되는 거.
It's like a slimming tight.
그래서 그렇게
It's
그렇게 생각하고 이제 여러 가지 찾던 중에 제가 아까 말씀드렸던 그냥 사람들이 원하는 걸 많이 올리는 카페나 사이트를 통해서 사람들이 그런 걸 원한다는 걸 알게 되고 그리고 여러 가지 이제 거래소들 찾게 된 결과 정말 압박 스타킹이라는 게 있더라고요. 근데 그거는 한국에서 판매하는 게 아닌 다른 그런 뭐 중국이나 일본에서 판매하는 거를 알게 됐고요.
Well, so after looking through all those like realistic websites and cafes where people uploaded their own taste and where I learned of all these public needs, I was able to actually find that there was a type of tights that actually does the job, and I learned that it wasn't coming from Korea, but it was from China and Japan.
그런 것들을 굉장히 찾고 찾으니까 그런 게 하나 있었는데 사람들은 그게 있는지 모르시더라고요. 그리고 물론 다른 쇼핑몰도 그랬어요. 그래서 제가 이제 거의 최초로 그 상품을 올렸고 그 상품을 올리니까 되게 많은 사람들이 그 상품을 사는 분들이 많아지고 매출이 갑자기 많아졌던 것 같아요.
Well, as a result of my research into finding this item, this particular magical tight item, I learned that there weren't like that many people who knew about it, and not many of the other shopping malls knew about it. So I was one of the pioneers to bring that into the shopping mall, and that sold a lot.
매출은 많이 벌었지만 그래도 지금은 갚고 있는 상황이긴 한데 어쨌든 매출을 올리려면은 자기가 원하고 자기만 생각하고 있는 뭐 그런 상상의 그런 뭐 빼짝맞은 모델이 아니라 더 많은 사람한테 판매를 해야 되잖아요. 일단 옷은. 그러니까 대중을 생각하면서 옷을 판매하는 게 좋을 것 같습니다.
So to definitely increase your revenue, instead of sort of being in your imaginary world of having everyone be like a model figure, sort of applying all your items into sort of realistic, like everyday people's figures, that definitely helped me understand more of the public needs, and that's what got me where it was.
That's great. I'm interested in this magical tights.
Yeah, I want to get one too.
I'm like, where can I get one? How are you doing with time? Do we have time for more questions? One more. Okay, so last question. Okay, right here.
그럼 제가 뚱뚱한 사람이 되잖아요.
Okay, can you translate
It's
that?
for everyone. Well, that just makes me a fat person now.
So our question was like, are you wearing your own clothes? Yeah.
지금 이거는 그 데니아에 따라서 스타킹이 압박력이 다르거든요. 데니아가 숫자가 크면 클수록 압박이 세져요. 제가 쓰고 있는 압박은 지금 중간 정도의 압박이에요. 그래서 지금 보면은 되게 타이트하죠. 그래서 좀
There are different variations in terms of how deep of a pressure that a tight can have, and she's wearing a medium level pressure. So,
Okay, should we ask for one more question or? Okay, one final question.
Yeah.
Okay, right there.
6개월 만에 큰 돈을 벌었다고 하는데 되게 어린 나이에 이렇게 큰 돈 만지게 되면은 그 나이 때 또 사람들 많이 만나고 화장품도 사고 싶고 그러다 보면은 사고 싶은 것도 많고 나중에 차도 사고 싶고 여행도 하고 싶고 하는데 그렇게 됐을 때 그 돈 관리라든지 왜냐면 돈을 만지려면 처음에 내 의지가 좀 약해질 수도 있고 또 몇 년 동안 오래 하려면은 그걸 붙잡고 있어야 되는데 이 돈 관리라든지 좀 가족이 도와주는 아니면 무슨 어떻게
So, since you were able to earn so much money within such short period of time, given like 6 months, how are you able to manage such big amount of money at such a young age? That I mean, anyone would be tempted to use or spend money on cosmetics or any kind of personal spending. But how are you able to manage it? Were there anyone else who was helping you out with managing your own funds?
옛날에 저라면은 그 정도의 돈을 만졌으면 정말 상상하는 거 이상으로 많이 샀을 거예요. 화장품부터 시작해서 뭐 로션, 화장품, 뭐 머리에 쓰는 거, 옷, 그리고 뭐 속옷, 뭐 신발, 뭐 여러 가지 많이 샀을 거예요.
If it was me, like long time, like if it was me before, I would have bought lotion, cosmetics, clothing, anything for hair, underwear, shoes, and basically everything. But
근데 저는 가정 환경이 정말 어려웠거든요. 빚이 정말 상상할 만큼 그 상상하는 금액보다 더 많은 빚이 있었거든요.
But the situation that I faced in terms of financial problems that my family faced was way over what anyone else could imagine in my at my age. So
네, 돈을 벌 때마다 내야 되는 금액들이 있었고
and every time I make money, I had to pay off bills like on a regular
네.
basis. So it wasn't.
돈을 벌 때마다 내야 되는 금액이 많이 있었고 그리고 또 대가족이다 보니까 제가 거만해질 수 있는 그런 상황이 아니었어요. 대가족이다 보니까 할아버지도 있고 할머니도 있고 아버지도 있고 어머니도 있고 이러니까 제가 생각하는 예전의 모습은 꿈도 꿀 수가 없었던 것 같아요.
And because I had to support the extended family with grandpa, grandma, mom, dad, and multiple siblings, I couldn't be who I was before it all went downfall. So
돈 관리 같은 경우는 이제 어머니께서 좀 많이 도와주셨고요. 제가 돈이나 이런 거는 좀 숫자가 커지거나 이러면은 너무 스트레스를 받을 것 같아서 어머니께서 많이 도와주고 계시고.
and also my mom helped me a lot in terms of managing the big amount of like big numbers because I thought that I would be too stressed out having to think about managing big numbers.
돈을 다 갚았다면 모를까 지금은 아직도 갚고 있는 상황이기 때문에 제가 생각하고 있는 뭐 머리 용품, 얼굴 뭐 저를 위해서 쓸 수 있는 거는 아직까지는 많이 좀 거만하지 않나 그런 생각을 하면서 돈을 많이 아끼고 살아가고 있어요.
And even until now, like we're still paying off the debt that we had from earlier. So even until now, I don't think I have room to really be sort of selfish or arrogant, using my own money for my own good. So
네.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope that answered the last question. It was a nice closing question to think about what you should do for your family, too. And thank you again, everyone, for coming. If you have any questions, please feel free to come up and talk to us. And we hope to see you at the next Korea Society and Give One Dream event. So thank you.
감사합니다.